if you're bringing a drone into your company, whether that is search and rescue, public safety, real estate, golf course, whatever, what you really need to understand, and this part here really helps you with everything else past this, but what you really need to understand is that you just started an aviation department.
Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of Precision Drone Mapping's podcast. I'm Kendall Markwart, host of the podcast, founder, pilot, and innovator of Precision Drone Mapping. My vision is addressing challenges specific in the golf course and landscape management world by utilizing drone technology. I draw upon 40 years working in the industry, always looking for creative solutions to challenges in the business. In this episode, I talk with Kevin Morris of the Federal Aviation Administration about important considerations if you want to fly a drone in connection with managing a golf course or landscape area. Finally, make sure to subscribe and follow Precision Drone Mapping for the next installment of our conversation, in which we talk about using drones to spray, seed, and spread materials. Let's explore the possibilities. Yeah, this is interesting. What would it be for superintendents to have a drone on the shelf and to be able to use it? And I'm like, okay, that's kind of that's a plausible question, but from an licensing and regulation standpoint, what do you see as possible problems besides the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, where's your golf course located? What are the airspace issues that you may have to deal with? And licensing for sure. So that's another hurdle to clear. Are there any other things from, a regulatory standpoint of a superintendent, getting on his drone and flying, and checking the course every day, for example, or something like that you can see would be an issue, or something that superintendents would have to know about?
Well, I think you hit some of the big ones right out of the gate, right?
Right.
So, initially, I try not to give business advice, not because I think I'm a bad businessman. It's just that I wouldn't want to be held accountable in case I gave some information and stuff. You're right. So, not considering this business advice, but I do tell people, look, if you're bringing a drone into your company, whether that is search and rescue, public safety, real estate, golf course, whatever, what you really need to understand, and this part here really helps you with everything else past this, but what you really need to understand is that you just started an aviation department at your company, right? So, and I think that is the biggest hurdle for people to get over, because it's challenging. You see a drone, you don't think of it as an airplane. It's a drone, right? I connect it to my iPhone and I can fly the thing, right? I don't, it's not an aircraft. But of course, that's not how the FAA sees it. So to bridge that gap between what you think you just bought and how the FAA regulates what you just bought, to bridge that gap, the best piece of advice I can give is, look, you just added an aviation department to your business. You want to purchase an aircraft. That aircraft happens to be unmanned. We call it a drone. And you're adding that to your company's inventory of assets. Now, think of it
and
now
liability.
in terms of right. So think of it in terms of you just bought an aircraft. Now we're starting to think, okay, well, I'm probably going to need insurance on that. I probably have to register that. That aircraft's going to have to be operated by a pilot. That pilot's going to need to be certificated by the FAA. So then it's kind of like if you understand that first concept, everything else I'm about to say is going to make a lot more sense, and which you kind of already touched on. So we just bought an aircraft. What type of aircraft you buy is probably almost as critical as everything else that the FAA is going to regulate with that aircraft, because there are so many different drones out there with so many different capabilities. It really depends on your needs. So after you've narrowed that down and said, this is the aircraft I want, this is the drone I want, then you get into, you're going to need to have that drone registered with the FAA. These are like just some of the first steps, right? That drone registration is going to cost you $5. It's going to be valid for 3 years. and then you have to update it every 3 years with the updated registration. Because it's not going to be operated for recreational purposes, you're going to have to operate that drone under Part 107. And I'm assuming you well understand Part 107 at this point.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you'll need to operate that drone under Part 107, which means you're going to need a remote pilot certificate to operate that drone. And that remote pilot certificate will have to be current for the regulation. Yeah, every couple of years you have to maintain your currency on that.
Yeah, I just redid my research in March. My recurrent.
How did you like the online version versus going to a testing center and paying money?
Oh, that was awesome. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you. And
so now we've talked about registration. We talked about commercial remote pilot certificate, I should say. And I'm going to deviate a little off the FAA side right now and say so many states have, Minnesota's one, that's where I live, have enacted their own set of registration requirements, I think that's the easiest way to put it, for drones. So for example, in the state of Minnesota, if you have a drone that you're operating commercially, they will consider that a commercial aircraft. And there's a commercial aircraft registration that you have to do with the state, whether that's a King Air or a Mavic Mini. You have to register that aircraft with the state, and the state's going to require you to carry insurance on that commercial aircraft.
mm-hmm.
So after you kind of get the initial, I got the drone, I've got it registered with the FAA, I've got my remote pilot standing next to me, my next piece of advice would be to check with the state. What is the state going to require for you to operate that drone commercially? And these are all things before we even turn on the battery, sync it, and fire up the rotors, right? We haven't even flown the drone yet, right? So check with the state because they may have additional requirements for registration and insurance that you'll need to carry. Now, I'm going to jump off of that back into the FAA side. So once you've got all that, sort of the paperwork done on your brand new aviation department and your brand new aircraft, and you've got your pilot and you're ready to go, then you get into the operational side. Like, where are we flying? What airspace am I about to go into? Are there any restrictions on that particular airspace? Do I need to be aware of certain weather conditions? Where are people on the course? How am I going to maintain visual line of sight of my drone at all times? Those types of things are a lot more operationally and a little bit more fluid. Depending, as you know, where the golf course is, it might be in an area where you're going to need an airspace authorization.
Right.
Or if the president has come to town, you may not go at all that particular day that you want to fly because there might be a temporary flight restriction sitting right over your golf course. So understanding that piece is super critical too. And then just in terms of flying the drone, you're always looking at weather, what type of weather conditions are out there. Is it a good day to fly? How many people are on the course? How many avoid flying over people? Should I bring in visual observers to help me manage what I need to do? And those are a little bit more operational in terms of when and where you're flying that drone. But I think if you sort of walk through that whole process I just laid out there, you're going to go from not having a drone and not doing what you want to probably having a drone and doing what you want. But there's those steps in between are very, very crucial for your safety, for obviously the safety of other people, and then of course, the safety of our national airspace system. But we have, there's I golf as often as I can, which is not as much as I want, but there's a golf course relatively close by here that actually sits underneath the departure corridor from Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. And aircraft cross over the top of it pretty regularly, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet up on the departure run. And it would be really easy to think there's no way my drone is going to be anywhere near those aircraft. I'm going to be below treetop level. If there's an aircraft flying or my drone is flying, my drone's the least of that aircraft's problem. That's a mentality a lot of people have, but what they don't realize is that things can go wrong.
Right.
There are things called flyaways. There are lost C2, a command and control link goes down or something of that nature. You can have a drone, most, if not, I'll just say most drones that you can buy off the shelf are capable of flying much higher than the FAA limited 400 feet. Thousands and thousands of feet. So it's entirely possible that you could have a situation where that drone goes out of control and now it sails up there, right? So it's one of those things where once you start operating, goes back to the operational piece, you start to think a little bit more like a pilot. You start to take in risk-based decision-making and aeronautical decision-making, and, you know, in terms of, there's probably countless stories of people that took their drone, flew out over the beach, out over the ocean. It was really cool, but didn't plan one bit for the fact that there was an offshore breeze that they had to fly into a headwind to get back, and they flew their battery down to 20%, and now their drone's at the bottom of the sea, right? Because they didn't calculate the wind, right? So all those things kind of factor into it, but again, you hit kind of those steps along the way, then you're going to be pretty well situated for what you want to do, whether that's golf course data collection or mapping.
Yeah. And knowing the wind and stuff like that reminded me of that.
Well, that's a great example, because that's been the shift over the last 10 years with unmanned aircraft, right? That unmanned aircraft been around forever. Whether you call them drones or not, they've been around long before I was alive, and I was born in 74. So they've been around a long time. They really didn't sort of catch their stride until the late 70s, early 80s, where the RC model airplane community really started to get going, and people were building them in the garage, building them in the basement. And they're, generally speaking, fixed wing, propeller driven aircraft, usually replicas of, military trainers is what got people interested in them. And if you didn't understand aerodynamics and weather, lift, thrust, weight, drag, wind, crosswind, density, altitude, things like that, you typically didn't have too many flights before you were picking up the pieces of your RC airplane, right? And you had a lot of time, and your math teacher had a lot of time invested in building that thing. They didn't come out of a box. They came in pieces. You had to cut out a balsa wood and glue, and then hot air gun to get the fabric coating or the plastic coating or whatever. You spent time building those, so you didn't want to crash them. Compare that now. You walk into a store, walk out, open the box in the parking lot, stick it to your phone, and you're flying a drone. You don't know the first thing about wind, crosswind, weather, density, altitude, lift, thrust, weight, drag, rotation, or anything. You don't know anything about that. You just know that it syncs to my iPhone and I touch here and it goes there, right? So there's this generation of pilots that we're trying to educate, and we're not trying to make Chuck Yeagers out of these folks. We're just trying to get them to understand, look, if the wind is at your back and you fly your drone a half mile away from you, it's going to take a long time for that drone to get back. So maybe consider the wind when you're operating. If you're flying a drone and the wind is blowing left to right and you've got a big crowd to the right, but you're flying your drone off to your left, realize that if you have a failure, that drone's not coming straight down. It's going to go with the wind right into that crowd to your right. It's those types of things we package up and put a little bow on it and call it aeronautical decision making. That's the real challenge we have with this sort of new generation of drone pilots. They're not bad pilots. In fact, some of them are just absolutely amazing at what they can do with their drones. I wouldn't even stand a chance to operate them that way. But getting them to understand you're flying an aircraft, you're flying it in the national airspace system, you're sharing that airspace system with those jets that are at 5,000 feet overhead. You do have some responsibilities, and you got to think a little bit about what you're doing. That's kind of been the challenge.
Hey, thanks for listening in. I hope you found a nugget of value in today's topic. If you did, then please like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. We got some interesting stuff coming up about drones in the world of golf course management.